This week on Inevitable.
Google stages a terrorist attack.
Circumventing the TSA saves the day.
And we use a press conference to get our jobs back.
Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Inevitable, that podcast where video evidence of us committing a crime isn't enough to fire us. Because this week we watched Intelligent Listening for Beginners.
Written by Chris Boucher.
Directed by Christopher Baker.
And aired on July 20th, 1987.
Yeah, episode 3, which means we're officially 1/3 of the way through Star Cops.
Heck yeah. Actually, not heck yeah, because this show is really growing on me. I really liked this episode, especially
It's
on my
growing
rewatch.
on you? I liked it from the start. I mean,
No, you didn't. Your
not
first
like a
episode,
lot.
you were
I
like...
didn't like it a lot from the start, but I was like, all right, I see where it's going. Then episode 2 is where it really got me. And then this one was like, yeah, this is pretty good.
Well, I would say I enjoyed this episode a lot more on my second watch of it than my first one. And I'll explain kind of why that is. I didn't find any production info for this episode other than a few actor connections. A few pretty funny ones, actually.
Yeah, I didn't really... Well, admittedly, full disclosure, I didn't really go looking explicitly, but also didn't really find anything.
Yeah, well,
So-
I did go looking. And by looking, I mean I Googled for like 10 seconds and found nothing, so...
10 seconds.
Speaking of Google... Michael Chandri has called David and Nathan in to his base on the moon because Star Cops HQ is now on the moon.
Right, but before they go, we have these, we have a whole bunch of other scenes where, one, I guess
Oh,
the Star
right.
Cops just,
Oh my gosh.
live in the storage room that we saw last episode. I guess that's Star Cops HQ now.
Yeah.
We also see, a nuclear power plant blow up.
Yeah, can't believe I forgot about this. This is amazing. Especially, I feel like the direction these people were given is just, run around this area wildly because this is amazing. They're just, jumping off rafters and, doing flips and falling down stairs and jumping off raised walkways and doing all kinds of weird stuff as this base blows up.
Right. We also see the messages that precede the explosion. Oh, Rose, thou art sick, and the invisible worm that flies in the night, which I forgot to put an end quote on.
Yeah, so any William Blake fan will know that this is from the poem The Sick Rose or something like that.
Any Raj Blake fan won't know that necessarily. They do mention what poem it's from later on.
Yeah, I mean, I know the poem. I've read the poem outside of the context of Star Cops, but I forgot what it's called.
Wow, you have a life outside of the context of Star Cops? Is that what you're saying?
Don't give it away.
So we see that the Star Cops, Spring is watching the news, and then he's talking with Dave. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna have to fire Hubble and Kenzie. David's like, wait, what? Why? And he's like, because they're crooked. And I'm like, wait, there are more Star Cops? There are more than 2 Star Cops?
Yeah, we find out actually later in this episode that Kenzie was always a Star Cop and was just on leave. So I guess that video where she was talking with Theroux in episode 1, I guess she was part of the Star Cops at that point.
Was she talking with Theroux? I thought she was talking with, what's his name?
The criminal from episode 1. I can't remember.
I thought she was talking with Divas.
No, Divas wasn't in episode 1.
No, I know, but she's talking with someone, and then she's surprised to see Divas come in, and I don't think it was David, because David says he didn't know anything about this, and he's like, wow, how could you bring on this completely unknown Star Cop to me without telling me?
I'm talking about episode 1. Remember, she talks with Theroux in episode 1 on that video.
Oh, was that
call.
her on the screen?
Yeah, that was her.
Wow.
Yep. That was her. She's in 8 episodes of Star Cops, all but 2. All but episode 2.
Well, I guess she got her job back at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
So I guess we're up
she
to
did.
4 Star Cops now.
Yep. Because Hubble just accepted his firing.
Hubble resigned.
You can't fire me. I quit.
Basically. But yeah, he's like, I'm going to have to fire them because they're crooked. And Dave is like, what proof do you have? And he's like, I've got some pretty solid proof. Not enough to convict them in a court of law, but enough to fire them.
Yeah, it's pretty much enough to fire them.
They're having this conversation like in the moon rover while they're driving to Outpost 9.
With the most hilarious, like, unfitting music playing over the conversation as well.
This whole scene is just like hilarious in so many ways. Because first off, right when the shot starts and you see the back of the moon rover like bouncing around, I was like, somebody forgot to focus the camera because like the whole backside of the moon rover is like out of focus until like halfway through the scene where I guess someone was like, ah, shoot, gotta focus the camera.
Well, the moon rover model itself looks amazing. It actually looks really cool.
It does.
Until you
it also looks hilarious.
Until you see the little orb cockpit thing on the front with like the :D face on it. It's upside down, but I'll never be able to look at this moon rover and not see that face. God.
It's because of the two little headlights?
Yeah, I think those are lights. And then the viewing, the windshield is a semicircle.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't have known in 1980. Hey, look, they predicted Google and like the malevolent potential use of like cataloging all of the world's information in 1987, but there's no way they could have predicted emoticons. I think people were actually probably using emoticons in 87 on like Usenet postings and stuff. Yeah, typewriters. Oh man, I saw this letter from like the 1890s, and like it said like lol, or like it wasn't, I forget exactly what it was, but it was like some like acronym that you think is part of the internet age, but it was like I think it was like LOL or something like in 1987 or sorry 1897. Or not 1890, the late 1800s or something like that. Man, I forget what it was.
Was it Lamau?
It was Lamau. No, it wasn't Lamau. Rafflecopter, you just see that? 1870s.
Just a letter from like King George. That joke in your last letter was totally rafflecopter.
Yeah.
If I was like forging letters from the 1800s, I would just put like Rafflecopter or Lamau in there somewhere just to see if someone would catch it.
Yeah, maybe this thing is forged. I mean, come to think of it, it probably was. But I just like the idea that like in the 1800s, people were saying lol. Well, that's also a thing of like people think selfies are new, but like there's so many, like when cameras first came out in like the 1800s, some of the earliest pictures that remain today are like selfies. Like seriously? Wow.
Yeah, well, that gets into a whole what is a selfie like debate.
God, is that a debate?
Yeah, because like if you take a self-portrait in the mirror, is that a selfie? If you take a picture on a camera from the 1800s where you like have to take the lens off and stand still for like 5 minutes in front of the camera and then get back up, is that a selfie? I don't know, man.
God. I don't think it's a selfie unless you use a selfie stick.
Oh, yes. Let me just connect my daguerreotype camera to a selfie stick. So Nathan and David get stopped by this security feature, which I guess just disables your moon rover while they scan for who even knows what.
Well, they're verifying that it's actually Nathan and David on the rover. So this is the first indication that, what were they called? Moonbase 9 or whatever it was.
Outpost 9.
Yeah, Outpost 9 is like cataloging a lot of information because they know like what Nathan and David's voices sound like.
Right.
But then the computer also stops them because it detects Box. Because David was grilling Nathan on some movie trivia, and Nathan uses Box to look up the answer. The computer detects Box and won't let them through until Nathan gives the clearance.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, also, David says something like, we're requesting passage, and then the computer goes, ready for voice communication. And Nathan says that's just a great line, where it's like, it used to take hard work and upbringing to be both polite and have bad manners at the same time. Now it just takes a computer.
Windows 10 is proof of this. Windows 10 like loading screen, something's happening. We're working on that for you. Just sit tight.
It's like the chaotic neutral in the alignment chart of error messages. HAL 9000 is like lawful evil. Can't let you do that, Dave.
Yeah, so you thought Pal's name was Hal. Do you think that was like a reference to 2001?
No, I just thought the way Nathan was saying it, that he was saying HAL.
Yeah. Also, the fact that Hal is like an actual name and Pal is just like, hey, pal. Hal is a male name, though. So.
There's a point in here where David also makes fun of Nathan's accent at some point, and I'm not sure if that was like a conscious choice by the actor, if that was like actually in the script that David makes fun of Nathan's accent, but he goes something like "commander," which is not the American way to say that word.
No. Yeah, the Anorak Zone site actually has a little bit of trivia that Nathan is affecting a hard-boiled detective accent during a singular line in this episode. But I just thought that was him like getting back at David for making fun of his accent.
Yeah, I'm really surprised they pointed that out and not the one time in this episode where they forgot to boxify. Who plays Nathan?
David Calder.
David Calder. They forgot to boxify his voice for a single word. I don't know if you noticed this, but at one point he asks Box a question and Box responds with "no." And they like didn't boxify Box's voice, so you just hear Nathan go no, but his voice, his like mouth doesn't move, and you're like, wait, was that supposed to be Box?
Well, that's how Chris Boucher always envisioned it. So I guess his vision did come across
it in
on
there.
screen. Yeah. And that's exactly like I think the confusion that he was hoping people would have of like, wait, was that Nathan or Box? Well, we're going to get a nice scene with Box later in this episode that actually points out some interesting things. But anyway, they get into Outpost 9. It doesn't look too heavily manned.
Yeah, in fact, we don't see anybody else except for Chandri.
Really? I thought we saw some people
I think when the
through
first time
halls.
they arrive, we see like two other people like either walking by or helping them into the foyer.
Yeah. And this is when we meet Michael Chandri.
And here's where my kind of mini rant last week about all that paper in the storage room suddenly became justified, like within the show, because Nathan's walking around Chandri's, I guess, office, and Chandri's like a multi-millionaire, and Nathan's like, how did you get all this past the weight limit that's like in place for bringing things up to space? That like would have cost you millions. And he's like, yeah, well, I paid it. I'm like, so why the bloody hell did they send all those papers in the last to the moon base?
It's okay, just relax. It's just paperwork.
I guess.
So Chandri is a secretive guy. He didn't actually even tell Nathan and David why he called them in. I guess the Star Cops are just so not busy that they just respond to any call.
Yeah, well, they're so not busy that I guess Nathan can just fire two of them and they'll still be like adequately staffed, at least until they find replacements.
Well, since Kenzie was on leave, I think they were doing just fine with just him and David, and then Hubble was just doing who knows what.
Yeah, what was Hubble doing for the past 2 episodes?
I guess that's why Nathan feels comfortable firing them.
I guess. But then he starts up that recruiting drive.
Or maybe now that Devis is like a full-time Star Cop, he's like got to fire 2 more guys.
Gain 1, fire 2. Better watch out, David. Yeah, Chandri basically just says the Black Hand gang is going to hijack a shuttle flying to space.
Yeah, well, we actually do get kind of what the system that he developed was, but a lot of this was just Nathan conjecturing and him just being like, yeah, you got me. So basically what Chandri has done is he's used his dad's research and combined it with his own research to create an intelligent listening AI basically that catalogs and listens to information. And the end goal of this is that the computer will decide what information is necessary and what's not.
This is basically calling the whole system that Edward Snowden was like the whistleblower for with the NSA.
Yeah.
The whole PRISM system was like basically this.
This is also the plot of Metal Gear Solid 2, which I just have to mention as a big Metal Gear fan.
Interesting.
And the main character is actually supporting this, by the way, in the game. Well, it's like one of those, like, what's it called, like neuromancer type things where at the end you find out, like, oh man, like I was actually working for the AI all along, like, oh shit. And the villains were actually, you know, on the side of like shutting down this AI, but whatever.
I guess. But Shanji's basically like, I can't confirm or deny that what you said is true, but yeah.
It is. He basically confirms it, like, here. He's like, oh, you got me.
Well, so while Nathan's leaving, he's like, feels like you're hiding something, and Shanji's like, And then we see, I guess, like a train switch.
Yeah, this is
board.
This is the Channel Tunnel. So this is the train between Britain and France.
Nice to know that still exists in this dystopian future.
Nice to know that still exists 8 years from now. I actually like the scene, because the characters in this are such classic, like, Chris Boucher, just like random characters to throw in, because they're just in this one scene. They don't have names. They're just random people, but they're at each other's throats the entire scene.
Yeah, there's clearly some history between these two guys because they like want to strangle each other right off the bat.
Yeah, the one guy comes in and the guy's like, you know, this extra shift you make me take. I put 16 trains through this tunnel, and the guy's just like, shut up, just leave. And I like the banter between them.
And only one of the guys is ever looking at the screen when something goes wrong with it, and they're like, look, something's wrong. And they're like, nope, looks fine to me. And it's like, okay.
But the message appears again. What was it?
Rose, thou art sick.
Yeah, and the invisible worm that flies in the night.
Damn abstract poetry. Since when do worms fly?
Well, dragons are also called worms.
That's a surprise to me.
You know that? You never heard of WYRM?
Oh, I guess.
Which is worm, and that's the same like that's the same word as worm. Like, it's,
I guess,
etymologically. Chandri's also like a big etymology buff because he gives them that lecture on like where the word lunacy comes from, which is madness brought on by the moon.
I read a very interesting Reddit thread yesterday where someone was like, what happens if William the Conqueror loses at
Hastings?
At Hastings. Like, what happens to the English language if William the Conqueror loses there? And some historians propose that it would probably sound a lot less like modern English and a lot more like Old English.
Yeah.
Since they basically postulated that, what's the guy that William was fighting at Hastings? Like Henry or Harry?
Yeah, I have no idea.
That he was like not competent enough to have built the empire that William the Conqueror did after that battle. Huh. And that Europe would probably be a lot more like fractured, I guess, language-wise.
Well, like when you go so far back and say like, well, if this happened instead of this, like it's nearly impossible to like guess like what would have spiraled out from there. You know,
of course.
Like what would 2019 be if this one thing had been different in like the year 1000?
I mean, that's basically chaos theory in physics.
But yeah, English would probably sound a lot more Germanic. Yeah. Tip for reading Old English is just pronounce all the letters and pronounce the vowels like you do in Spanish. That's
Good to know.
That's like basically how it would sound.
Good to know.
It sounds weird as hell, and it sounds a lot more like German.
Nice.
Also way easier to read and learn how to read. So English is one of the hardest languages in the world to learn how to read.
Because there's so many, there's like
no
more
rules.
Exceptions to the rules than there are things that follow the rules.
There are no rules. All those things that you are taught are rules are actually not rules. They're just like guidelines.
I before E, except after C, or like sounding like A in neighbor. You always be wrong no matter what you say.
Is that part of the rhyme? I've never heard that.
No, that's
a
reference to a stand-up comedian's bit on that.
Oh. Anyway, Nathan and David head back to Starcop Base, and Kenzie's back from her extended leave, and she's about to get fired.
Yeah, well, Nathan like plays the video of her trying to bribe a criminal, quote unquote.
Not even
actually just Divas.
Not even bribe, it's extort. She's like, I'm gonna offer you protection, but you're gonna have to pay up. Nathan's like, you're already paid to offer people protection, Kenzie. You're fired.
Yeah, this is like pretty rock solid evidence. And she's like, I was just doing it to add extorting a cop or bribing a cop on. And Nathan's like, right. When has that defense ever worked?
But the most hilarious part is like is when she goes, "This isn't enough to fire me." And like video evidence of you extorting a guy. It's just pretty much enough to fire you.
And then Davis comes in and she's like, you set me up. And Nathan's like, doesn't matter. You were the one who made the proposal, not him. So
she's fired, and Theroux is actually not very pleased with Davis and Nathan's methods. Or at least not pleased that he wasn't part of the plan.
yeah, well, Nathan justifies it. He's like, I needed a clean approach. And David's like, you didn't trust me? He's like, no, not that. I just didn't want your conscience harping in my ear, basically. Kenzie tries to sell him a gun, too, when she comes in before she gets fired. She's like, look at this great new gun I've discovered.
Oh, man, okay, yeah, so there's this weirdly, like... I feel like there's this weird, like, racist undertone to Kenzie, because when she comes in, she refuses to shake Theroux's hand, and then immediately after that, she mentions, like, the race component to the gun, which is that you can key this gun to work...
Specific pigment levels, I think she says.
Yeah, which I imagine means that you can key it to like work on.
I mean, you don't even have to imagine. Color, that's literally how it works. Because David's immediate response to that is, "Wow, great! They've invented a racist gun."
Yeah.
But yeah, then Nathan's like, "Oh, here's your new promotion, David." By the way, and David's like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm promoting you to second in command." Which begs the question: wait, who was second in command before David?
I think it was David but not officially. You know, I think this is his official promotion because there were only 2 Star Cops before. So.
But I'm wondering, like, before that, who was second in command? Because Nathan gets hired to replace the previous commander. So, like, who was his second in command? Was it Kenzie?
Maybe.
Was it Hubble?
Yeah, it might have been Hubble. Might have been that guy who. Wait, actually, so. Touching back to the last episode, was that story that what's-her-name told in the last episode about the guy who was like an ex-Star Cop, was that true or was that all just like a ruse? Was there actually like a guy who wanted to get revenge on Nathan? Or
no, I think that was a ruse. Because the whole thing was that guy was from the moon and David was like, there's no Star Cops from the moon. I guess also the other thing is that David has just like an encyclopedic knowledge of all the Star Cops.
Although Nathan... He got told that there were no like moon Star Cops.
Well, that, but also I was going to say Nathan also implies that the Star Cops are like a new agency, like relatively new.
Yeah.
In this episode, I mean.
Get your timeline straight, Boucher. / Evgeny, or whatever his name was.
Evgeny.
Anyway, Nathan tells David and Davis to go investigate the guns. Which Davis is like, I think I'll go take a nap instead. But then David flashes his second-in-command badge or whatever. He's like, you're coming with me, Davis.
Yeah, so Davis gets sent to Earth to go buy the guns.
Yeah.
Nathan decides to go take a nap. But before he does, he asks Box to look up the Black Hand Gang. And then he's like, initials, BHG. And I'm like, couldn't Box like figure out the initials from the name?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting scene because of Box. Box, as we know from episode 1, was created by Nathan's dad. And Box, in a way, is kind of like the system that Michael Chandri has created, just without like the cataloging capabilities. Mm-hmm. He has the capability to tap into information from, seemingly multiple different sources. And, he gives Nathan that information. So that information is being curated through Box.
Right.
So if there was something that Box potentially didn't want to tell Nathan, that Nathan wouldn't know.
Right. But there seems to be the incapability of Box to lie.
Maybe, yeah.
That's just like the impression I've gotten.
Yeah, I don't know if we know.
Maybe it's like Zen. It just seems like Zen is telling them the truth, but then there's that one random episode where Zen was like, sorry, I can't tell you that. And we were like, wait, what? Does Zen have free will? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I assume that Box had like its own personality in AI.
Like Aurak.
Yeah. But maybe not. Maybe not.
Can't forget how many AIs showed up on Blake 7.
A ton.
That was the show that really leaned on the AI crutch, not Doctor Who.
Yeah, we were joking about Doctor Who leaning on like malevolent AI in our most recent, or not most recent, one of our recent Doctor Who episodes.
Yeah.
Which I only remember two, which were Votan and Boss.
There were at least 4.
Yeah, there were at least 4. But yeah, the Black Hand gang is like a real. There's like been multiple terrorist organizations that had the name Black Hand Gang or Black Hand, like in real life.
Good to know the real-life Black Hand gang joins the likes of GE in surviving this dystopian world.
Oh yeah.
Not even CNN survived. They're watching TWBC.
Oh yeah. TWBC is not a real station, is it?
Not as far as I could tell.
But yeah, no wonder Star Cops are always at each other's throat and have succumbed to lunacy, because just look at their rooms. Look at how small and awful these rooms are. It's literally just a bed crammed in like a closet with like a folding chair, no windows, no door except that one, and just white walls, just blank white walls. This is
Well, it projects things on the white walls because Nathan asks for lapping waves on the ocean.
That was a small screen embedded into the wall.
Yeah, same thing.
This would suck. This would actually suck.
Probably.
Just like working at the Star Cops as a whole.
Well, yeah, you basically your HQ is the storage room.
half your people are just corrupt.
Yeah, half your people are corrupt. Everybody on Moonbase hates you, because that was the thing last week too. Everybody was like talking to David like we hate Star Cops here on Moonbase.
Probably hates him even more now that they just commandeered their base. What happened to all the people who used to work in this base? Where they just moved?
They got kicked out. They're like, Star Cops taking over. So Divas goes to Earth. He discovers that Chandri developed the gun. He's like, that's pretty weird. And Nathan's like, that is pretty weird. David kind of just vanishes for the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
He gets set to fire Hubble, and then he has a video call with Nathan. He's like, Hubble basically just resigned, and then we don't see him again till the end of the episode.
No.
Divas gets on the shuttle to go from Earth to space and sits next to Kenzie, and I was immediately like, I bet he's going to be on the shuttle Chandri said was going to be hijacked. So you can see that coming from a mile away.
Well, wasn't that was their plan, right? Or no? Was that not part of the plan to be on this shuttle?
No. I think they were just taking a shuttle to space.
Well, what was also weirdly not... Are you sure? That's so weird to me.
Yeah, I think they were just selling it to the press like they were on that shuttle because Star Cops wanted extra security because Kenzie's like, brown-nosing Nathan.
Yeah.
By
or not even brown-nosing, because he knows that she's just straight up lying. She's just making it out that way to the press.
Yeah, like the way that both Divas and Kenzie act, like they're both like super surprised about this guy just hijacking the ship because they're like, what's going on right now?
Actually, weirdly, yeah, that's true. Weirdly, Kenzie takes the place of the AI at the end of the episode, where she's like totally in control of the information that gets passed on and like uses that to her complete advantage.
Well, we find out the AI isn't even real because Nathan now, when he finds out Chandri developed the gun, he's like, wait, that's kind of weird. So he drives over to Outpost 9 and he confronts Chandri about it because he's like, what's going on, Chandri?
Yeah, so this is where we find out what Chandri's plan is, and this is like actually really convoluted. So to the best of my ability to understand this plan...
Oh, you go first.
Chandri's father developed a computer virus that could completely disable computers. And Chandri decided to use that. The system that he was developing, the intelligent listening system, was actually a failure. But he secretly embedded his father's virus in multiple different computer systems on Earth. And then once those systems were disabled, he was going to use the idea that his system had detected some of the crimes that were involved, or the Black Hand with the Black Hand gang's crimes, essentially. What was I saying? As a like a proof of concept for the military to like adopt a system or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what I understood.
What I understood was that he because Nathan says something like, "Oh, you got your intelligence from the military, didn't you?" That basically what Shanju was doing was staging terrorist attacks, but also basically playing all sides and just getting intelligence from different militaries and then selling it to the other military and claiming it came from his intelligent listening system. And he's like, by the time that they notice I've been stealing the intelligence, my system will be working and they'll never know.
Yeah, well, he says the like failsafe in his plan is that he's going to tell people that the bug also infected his own system.
Yeah, he's like, if they basically like try to make it out like it doesn't work, I'll just say the bug infested it and blew it up.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'd have to rewatch the scene, I think, to fully understand his plan. But it's convoluted.
He's basically inventing a terrorist plot to cover up the fact that his stuff doesn't work. I feel like I've seen that scene before.
Wow. This is basically the Y2K bug with spyware thing, 1987 edition. Have you heard of that like conspiracy theory of like the Y2K bug fix is actually like government like spyware?
Wow, that's weird.
The next big one is going to be the 2038 thing or whatever it is, which is like actually like a bigger problem than the Y2K issue.
Yes. We're just 19 years out from that one.
Like actually a pretty big problem. The Y2K one was as well, but I think this one's even bigger. I actually found I was researching some don't ask me why, but I was researching bomb shelters in Southern California recently. And I found some like really old site about like people who were getting ready for Y2K in Southern California, and it like mapped all the bomb shelters in Southern California, and there's like a ton, like just in places where you would never expect.
That's weird.
Yeah.
'Cause you're like not allowed to have basements here because of the San Andreas fault.
Well, there's a lot of underground areas that are bomb shelters. A lot of Southern California is actually like made for military action. Like if you've ever wondered why the roads in like LA County, parts of LA County, and most of Orange County are so big, it's so that tanks and helicopters can go on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, the shuttle that Divis and Kenzie on gets hijacked. Kenzie's got one of her guns on board.
This is like the NRA's like wet dream. Like, see, guns on planes do help.
And we see one of the terrorists holding up like just a plastic ball.
It was a glass bomb because they were like, guess they didn't scan for glass. Like,
but it
really?
looks just like a plastic
for
ball.
Freaking glass? Like, TSA isn't scanning for freaking sharp objects in their scanning process.
It looks just like a plastic ball, though. That's why when Divis was like, they're not scanning for glass, I was like, seriously, doubt.
Reminds me of that, like, mini bomb from Project Avalon in Blake 7, where it's like, it's just this small ball that if you drop causes, like, a nuclear explosion.
Oh, yeah. That at the end of the episode, Blake puts in the robo Avalon's hand. He's like, there's a secret word that'll cause it to drop it, and you don't know what it is. Bye.
It's swordfish. No. But yeah, Kenzie and Divis stop this terrorist action. Divis does it in like the most hilarious way. He's just floating through the shuttle and he's like, where's the bathroom? Like, first of all, I forget exactly what he says, but
he grabs the air stewardess away from the terrorists so that Kenzie can just gun them down violently, I guess.
Guess so. So the day is saved. Kenzie is definitely looking forward to the fame that this is going to bring her.
Kenzie and Divis have some sort of weird romantic subplot set up in this episode, too. Divis is revealed to have been married 5 times.
Yeah, so this is so odd, and it's honestly a little bit uncomfortable. So one of the weirdest things about this entire shuttle scene is that Kenzie is just randomly on this flight. Like, Divis just runs into her.
Yeah.
She's not part of the Star Cops at this point anymore. She actually went back to Canberra, Australia, to talk to her superiors or whatever, but they just run into each other here, and Divis just immediately starts hitting on her.
And she's like, I thought you didn't like police ladies, and he's like, you're not a policeman anymore. Like, okay. It's also weird how there's no assigned seating on this shuttle to space either. Just Divis is just like, is this seat taken? And Kenzie's like, no. And he's like, all right, I guess I'm sitting here then.
Well, assigned seating only works if like the person with the assigned seat shows up and asks you to get out of the seat.
I guess I had to do that once at the theater because all the theaters here do assigned seating now. So I showed up and someone was in my seat. I'm like, wait, what? You're in my seat, bro. And they had to move. And then this was the weirdest thing is that, like, I don't know why I'm going so into detail about the story,
All right,
but it was
just
like
go ahead.
a dad and his son, right?
Okay.
And the son was in my seat. So I was like, hey, can I sit there? So I sat in my seat. So I guess the dad and the son had just booked the seats like on either side of my seat. And then the dad was like, hey, can we swap so that I can sit next to my son? And I'm like, all right, sure. If you would just like ask that before I sat down, I would have been like, sure. But it said you waited for me to sit down, watch an entire trailer, and then you asked if we could swap. Anyway, that's the whole story.
Yeah, the assigned seating in movie theaters thing actually causes more problems than it solves, I guess. I think.
Possibly. I don't know. It's nice that it guarantees you a seat, a good seat, if you book early enough.
I guess.
So you don't have to arrive at the theater before the trailers start. You can just arrive after the trailers.
Unless the person just pulls out their, this is the United States, so they could just pull out their mandatory gun
Damn, I knew that was where that was going.
and be like, just make me get out of the seat.
If someone pulled out a gun on me in the movie theater, I'd be like, all right, goodbye. Guess I'm not seeing this movie.
Guess it is your seat. My bad.
My bad. Guess I misread my ticket. And then I would leave, and then I would call the cops and be like, somebody just pulled a gun on me.
Call the Star Cops.
I don't think they'd deal with that.
Yeah, Nathan doesn't even carry a gun, we find out in this episode. Was this like a whole like commentary thing about how like the British cop doesn't carry a gun, but the Australian one does at all times, even on a plane?
Maybe. There was this weird kind of like other, not racist, but countryist? I don't know. Where they were talking about Hubble, and Nathan's like, I'm going to fire Hubble. And David's like, he's the only other American star cop. Like, what does that mean? What are you saying about the star cops? And he's like, doesn't matter. I mean, he doesn't really count anyway. And I'm like, wait, what's going on here? Like,
doesn't he say that David doesn't count as an American? Or
yeah, I think so. Yeah, David says like I don't really count as an American. I'm like, wait, what's going on here? Like, what is this saying?
Well, I think this is all adding to David's backstory because so far we have the information that he was a flight engineer with NASA. He left the program, and now he doesn't consider himself American. Like, what the heck happened in his past? Like, is this some nefarious thing? I think we're slowly learning, and I think it's done very well. How like these little clues are being dropped. Watch it all just amount to like absolutely nothing.
Well, that would be hilarious. Just straight hilarious.
Anyway, the end of the episode is Kenzie and Davis at a press conference, and Kenzie uses this to get her job back.
Yeah.
David and Nathan are not too happy about, but they have no choice.
Yeah, because it raise a major PR problem if they say anything.
Right.
And that's the end.
Yep. So I had a couple things to talk about here, just some points I wanted to bring up from the episode that we haven't already. So I don't know if you had any as
I actually
well.
don't really have anything for this one. Nothing that I wanted to touch on specifically.
Well, I wanted to touch also specifically on the music because as unfitting as it was during the rover scene, I think the music in this episode is at its best. I think this episode demonstrates that this soundtrack really works for Star Cops. I especially like when they use... It was either the same track from episode 1 or it sounded very similar to the track from episode 1 when you find out that the flight controller guy was the culprit. They play that same sort of song again here when... I believe it's when you find out at the end that Chandri was behind it all. And while simultaneously also the shuttle is being hijacked. Which I really like that tune there. Yeah, so I just think this episode demonstrates that this soundtrack actually does work for Star Cops, despite how many people think it doesn't, and Chris Boucher thinking it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But, your mileage might vary on some of that stuff.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't really notice the music so much as I was just like, yeah, it works pretty well. The title theme is like actually growing on me in a weird way.
Yeah, I always liked the title theme.
Yeah, it's growing on me. I wouldn't say it's still the greatest choice, but...
Hey, won't be easy. Another random thing I also notice is that David likes to put his leg up on things. Like he always props one of his legs up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what does that say? What does that
Is
say?
this part of his dark backstory? Maybe his legs are weak due to like government experiments. I don't know. I'm just making this up at this point. But maybe that's just an acting choice from Eric Ray Evans.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
maybe
know.
it's just like a thing he decided to add to the character.
I mean, I would be really surprised actually if like episode 9 it comes up that there was like some big plot point that David puts his leg up all the
Yeah, I
time.
would be genuinely like shocked and awed. I'd be like, holy mother of God, Chris, you genius.
Or Holy Mother of God, this other writer for the show like took this thing that this actor did in a few episodes and like took it in a really weird direction.
Yeah. Well, so I guess I do have just a small little thing I want to touch on here, just briefly, is that because it's related to the whole character development thing, that Nathan still shows like a pretty strong like anti-computer bias, except for Box.
Right.
Like he says that whole thing about being polite but not having manners at the same time. All you got to do is be a computer. Like he's still basically like harping on a lot about how computers are bad and we shouldn't trust the computers. And it almost seems like he's actually justified in that when Shanji's like, yeah, this computer worm just blows up the computers and just blows up everything that they're connected to.
Right.
And that's kind of all I wanted to say. Like with Box though, he still seems like just fine with it, which I guess calls into question, like, is Box really a computer? Or does Nathan even consider Box a computer? Maybe not.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Box too and kind of that dilemma that you're bringing up. Because there's actually a line in this episode. I forget exactly what it is, but it's when Nathan and David are going back to StarCop's base from their first visit to Outpost 9. Nathan basically talks about how having a lot of information is great, but what a cop really needs is intuition along with that information. So I think maybe he feels like computers just give you the information, and you also need, your human intuition. Because he also has those lines of like, computers will never replace humans because humans are too imperfect, or like they have different thought processes than just, what's totally logical and stuff like that.
Right. I mean, he says that when he says the title of the episode, when he says intelligent listening for beginners, because he's like, computer can never intelligently listen because you wouldn't have that, like, human element. Like, it wouldn't be possible for the computer to decide what to pick out.
Flash forward to 2019.
Sweats profusely. That gif of Jordan Peele sweating.
But I think this episode also brings up a lot of questions that I had. Like, we know that Nathan's father created Box, but like, what is Box? Why is it different than other computers? Why was it originally supposed to not have a computerized voice and was supposed to just sound like a person? Like, what was it for? Why did Nathan's dad make Box in the first place?
Right.
And we don't have answers to any of those yet, but I'm hoping we will soon. And I'm actually really liking the mystery of that.
Well, the parallels between Box and what Chandri's dad and what Chandri were trying to develop is like kind of hard to ignore. It also makes you wonder, like, was Nathan's dad like connected in some way? Chandri's got a
Maybe.
brother too who comes on at the very end and was like, our dad would be proud of what my brother did. So
Yeah, and I mean I think that also leads into something else I kind of wanted to talk about for a minute. I don't have too much to say about this, but like the villain in this episode, is really interesting to me because like this is what Google is doing. This is what like search engines are doing, and this is what like the big information companies like, Amazon, Google, Yahoo even, or any of them really, like this is what's big now is like predictive analytics and stuff like that, and
right, aggregation
learning,
of personal information,
right? AI,
machine learning.
yeah, machine learning.
Yeah, the enemy in this episode is like was very abstract until Chandri was just like, doesn't work, I made it all up.
Yeah, but it was surprising to me that like back then this is something that at least Chris Boucher, I guess, or like that people would find like really scary. Yet these are things that like people voluntarily like these days.
Right.
Of like, it's either like the benefits of like these services outweigh the negatives, which I think is like true a lot of the time, or just like, yeah, like of course we want companies, but like also computers and like AI to like know a lot of stuff and be able to, and also be able to do what they will with that information. So,
Right.
because like, I mean, Google can hide whatever they want. Like they control so much of like what people can find out.
Because they can censor search results, and
Exactly. Yeah.
Google holds an immense amount of power.
Yeah.
That
But like, what
Alphabet, technically, the name of the company is Alphabet. So
But like, what are you gonna do? Like, are you gonna go to the library? No. Like, the benefits of like having all this at your fingertips is so like much more in most people's eyes, like, than the downsides of like this being controlled by like a certain amount of people and a certain amount of computers.
right.
Which is scary, I think, even to this day, and more relevant today than it was in '87 for sure. Maybe that's why people say Star Cop should make a comeback of like it was dealing with stuff that's like actually more relevant now than it was 30 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it was way ahead of its time. I think we mentioned this in the first episode, how it would do really well, like just by genre standards being near future sci-fi, which is a big thing now.
Yeah.
Or bigger thing, I guess I should say. More popular, at least.
And I think the one last thing I wanted to touch on was some of the drama between the Star Cops in this episode. This is something that I totally glossed over on my first watch of like I don't know what else to call it, of like the character like drama between all the cops. Like, and that's why I would say of these three on this rewatch, for me, this is my favorite of the first three episodes, because of like the human emotion that the characters show, like David and Nathan for sure, Kenzie, who is obviously a schemer, Divis, who is sort of the comic relief at times, but like that's something I totally glossed over on my first watch of this episode. I did not care about like that scene at all, or like the relationships between them. Mm-hmm. Yet on this rewatch, I think that was my favorite scene, where they're all kind of in that storage room, kind of discussing things.
Well, they all have very distinct characters, although apparently Divis's character is still going to be in large flux.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess the question is, like, how long is that going to continue? Having them all be really distinct, I think, lends itself very easily to having those character relationships being distinct and interesting and a vital part of the story.
Yeah. We'll see how that devolves from here.
Or evolves.
I think it devolves just based on stuff I've read, but hey.
But we're out of the episodes you've watched already now.
Yeah, everything from here on out is new for me.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
The final 2/3 of the show.
Yep. Anyway, a few of Britain's 10 actors are in this episode.
A few.
So this episode, obviously Kenzie was in episode 1. But we didn't do this sort of introduction for her. So she's played by an Australian woman, obviously named Linda Newton, who is just in like a bunch of Australian stuff. I didn't find that she was really in anything big or in any big roles, but she's in a lot of Australian TV episodes. And here's the more surprising and interesting one. Michael Chandri is played by David John Pope, who is the Candyman on Doctor Who. In the Happiness Patrol.
What?
He's the freaking Candyman.
Jeez. Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's amazing. That's just great.
And that's actually after this, so he has yet to play the Candyman as of this episode of Star Cops.
Wow.
Yeah.
Little does he know what's coming. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add about the actors.
No, I mean,
but I have quotes.
Yeah, as the show goes on, like, there's going to be fewer and fewer, I think, people to have in this segment, which is okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I have quotes, though, from Nathan. We've always heard more than we listen to. And also from Nathan, if you're not paranoid, how are you going to know who your enemies are?
Oh, perfect mentality for a cop. Pretty
Star
good ones.
Cop.
Pretty good ones. Pretty, classic Chris Boucher, snappy dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Almost too snappy in a way. Yeah, I have a couple quotes. I have one from David in the beginning. He goes, "Organizations of anarchists sounds like a contradiction in terms, doesn't it? Kind of like military intelligence."
That's a good one.
And then I have one from Nathan. He goes, Blake, the visionary and lunatic. And obviously he's talking about William Blake, but...
But you were thinking of Raj Blake?
Yes. And there are some movie quotes in this episode.
Right. Man's got to do what a man's got to do. Which in the episode, I think Nathan uses box to discern it's from...
Yeah.
Shane.
Which is a Western movie from like the 50s, I think.
But if you try to look it up, everyone attributes it to John Wayne, but no one can really... It's like misattributed to John Wayne because no one can really point out where it's actually from.
Yeah, like no one really... Yeah, exactly. Like nobody knows where this line is from.
Classic that it's from a Western, though. It might be from a Western, given Chris Boucher's penchant for watching Westerns.
Right. I think people have narrowed it down that it's from a Western, but people just misattribute it all the time. There's a lot of misinformation out there about it. Maybe Chandri's system could help figure out where this quote is from.
Too bad it was a fake. It's a fake.
Too bad we have a better version of that now called Google.
Oh, I was like, what? Yeah, well, I guess on that note, I'm actually out of things to talk about.
Yeah, so am I.
You can email us at thedoctor@decorativefestival.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Star Cops. On Kenzie, actually. Kenzie weaseling her way in to having a job again using the press conference. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. All inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook. Trust your doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're going to be watching Trivial Games and Paranoid Pursuits. But until then, the end.